And we're back. Welcome to the Abstractable Podcast. And this time it's just Lockie recording this intro. And it's just to give you a bit of an update on what this episode is. We're calling it the Abstract Number 1. And it's something we're going to record every 10 episodes or so to kind of check in on how we're going, what our favourite book was from the last 10 episodes, as well as what we've learnt and how we've tried to implement it into what we're doing in our day-to-day. A little public service announcement. You'll notice that essentially we talk about the book Let My People Go Surfing, which is an upcoming episode we haven't quite released yet, and we've kind of changed up the order of our releases a tiny bit due to some of the special episodes we've released and that sort of thing. But this episode still holds true, and in true me style, we've decided to release it anyway. So we discuss, I guess, what our favourite books and what our biggest principles we've learnt so far are, what we've been up to, and how we're implementing those things in our day-to-day life, as well as Ryan talks about some of the writing he's doing, as do I. So a bit of a new type of episode, and thanks for listening, and we hope you really enjoy it. As always, don't forget you can check out the full video from this episode on YouTube, and our show notes and other books are now available on our new website, abstractable.co. We really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
And we're back.
We're back. Different episode today.
What are we doing?
So, catch-up episode, working title, to go through the first 10, just see what, we've been talking about throughout the episodes, and also talking about what the hell's going on with us more generally.
Yeah, these are a bit of an update, bit of housekeeping, and a general overview of the last 10 episodes. And for this one, we're looking at episode 1 through to 10.
So first 10 episodes we've done too. So good job to you.
Congratulations. So to start, we thought it would be a good way to look at what is the top principle that we've taken from all of the last 10 books that we've read, and what has probably impacted us the most, or what we're applying the most in our day to day.
So for me, I think I pulled out, when you asked me this question, to solidify my feedback loops through repetition. And so I think that is probably more towards, I guess, making sure I'm reflecting and improving and do that sort of iterative learning, because that's something that it's hard to do, and it's hard to make time for, particularly when you feel stressed out and you're always running around. And it's something that I'm trying to put a lot of effort into, and kind of have done over the last, maybe 6 months.
So what does that look like, mate?
It's kind of multifaceted for me, and I've kind of tried to incorporate it in a lot of different ways. So the first way has been to kind of sit down and figure out what I'm trying to do that's going to improve my life and my work. So I've got a whole bunch of things that I want to track against, because that's kind of how my mind works. And the first step was kind of sitting down and figuring out, well, what's my job? So let's take the work example. Well, what are the 6 components of my work that I need to get good at to get where I want to go? And so for me, doing more of kind of a business management role now, it's more around sort of being able to develop proper systems within the company, develop a sales and marketing strategy, and those things kind of are certain targets that I want to kind of reach, and then I've written all them down and deliverables. And then I track all my time against how much time, because we have to do timesheets in our business. I've got categories that I track how much of that I'm actually doing.
So you have like these specifically set up custom categories?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they are, I guess I can tell you what they are if you'd like. And I use Trello to log all my tasks day to day. That's my time management system that I do. and I log every task against is this task moving me forward in those areas. So I need to improve the business reporting and systems, develop and maintain a business plan, put in a sales and marketing strategy, improve internal and external communication, update the finance administration or run. That's part of my duty, is to run that side of the company. And a few others like around legal and statutory requirements and reducing risk in those areas, making sure all our stuff's up to date and we're, compliant with regulations and stuff like that. And so all my tasks are tracked against them, and then all my time I track against that too. So that's kind of like a bit of a feedback loop to making sure in the moment I'm doing what I should be doing. But then I also incorporate now, we've put in an advisory board for the business that we check in with, who help us reflect upon ourselves. And I catch up with one of those guys, or both of them actually, regularly, to kind of just talk almost like a coaching, mentoring sort of thing, as well as
act as a bit of oversight, as well as a bit of personal mentoring.
It's a reflection, yeah. You can kind of have some external, feedback, and then
I think that's a critical element of this, because
Yeah.
there's only so much that you can gauge from the inside.
Yeah. And then I also write a journal. Got a habit tracker now. So I've really kind of dived into this. Meditation. And so this is a huge focus for me, because I find that in my current role in the business, I can get distracted very easily fighting fires and doing other stuff. So I've put a lot of things in place, mainly through, and I think this podcast is a way to reflect too. So I think I've done maybe 6 or 7 things that I've implemented that have helped me reflect more.
It's interesting, Lockie, that you've not just implemented this from a post perspective, but you've set up categorization of your time, for example, as a measure.
So I think that why I did those sort of day-to-day ones is that it allows me to reflect almost daily or weekly on what I'm spending my time doing, but it also makes me think about before. It's almost prevention, because I have to categorize each of the tasks. I actually can discard things before I do them.
It's like and I imagine you have a mini reflection at each point in time where you go, where does this task fit within? Or this little fire over here, does this fit within the schema of what's important?
And sometimes you just have to do things that aren't, but at least you're kind of thinking about it.
Well, there's been a very direct focus. Like it sounds like it's really focusing you in.
Yeah, so I do that more in my work, because you want to live your life a bit more freely outside of your work. You don't want to be a hyper, you don't want to be setting your calendar, at least I don't. Outside of work, you want to live your life.
I thought you had all your time outside of work categorised as well, mate.
Hour by hour. But to me, during the days, that's made me a lot more effective.
It probably allows you to work less too.
Yeah, and you and I set some goals and kind of had a bit of acted as an accountability partner for goals that are more broad than just professional. And we've done one check-in so far. So that's another part of the reflection that I'm finding useful as well.
What I find really interesting about the categorization is Jack Dorsey, and he runs Twitter, and also what's it called? Squarespace. No. Square.
The payment.
Yeah, the payment platform. So Squarespace is the website thing. And being CEO of both of those companies, he also segments his time.
How the hell do you do that?
In a similar fashion. Yeah. Well, he's been criticised, and again, I think he's been criticised by the the journos that are sitting on the sidelines, sitting around, sitting in the grandstand, not actually in the arena. So it's all well and good to, throw a couple of spears in, but I think a lot of them have been thrown by people that aren't actually in the mix themselves. And who knows? Twitter seems to be going remarkably. Mind you, they've had a couple of politically charged situations.
A lot of people use it. So.
And it's pretty popular. So he divides every single one of his days and supposedly works 8 hours at one company or something like that, 7 or 8 hours at one company, 7 or 8 hours at the other company every single day.
Come on. Jeez.
But every single day is wholly focused around one thing.
Right.
So Monday, I think he has teams, team day, which is having one-on-one chats with people. And then on Tuesdays is a completely different thing, a marketing day, and Wednesdays is a product day, and day 4 is business development or something of that nature. And so every single day is focused. So he's in this one frame of mind, going from one company into the next. And it seems to work for him.
Yeah, very interesting.
Keeps him focused.
Tell me about your top principle.
So for me, I've always been a bit of a theorizer, a bit of a over planner.
Keep it all in your head.
Keep it all inside, and try and find the best way forward. I think it's a bit of a perfectionism trait coming out.
Yeah.
So for me, the biggest one that I'm really trying to work on, and I think is more broadly across certainly from this year, is a bit more of an action bias.
Love it.
And this is something that we've seen across certainly all of the books I think that we've touched on.
Yeah.
Every single one of these people appears to have that action bias. It's not to say that they don't go out and do any planning, but they put themselves out there. They take the step forward. They don't overthink it. They don't plan every single variable.
They learn by doing. Yeah. So how have you done that?
So for a start, planning less.
Oh.
And just starting to put one foot in front of the other on particular things.
Have you found that mentally difficult?
Super challenging.
Yeah.
Now there's some spaces that I haven't been able to do it in too well yet, and maybe don't need to. So that might be, what's the best tool to do this, because it doesn't take a lot of time to do it.
Yep.
Or an app or something like that.
So you mean like looking into, hey, what's the best software out there, or what's the best Bluetooth speaker or something? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the space of, say, writing. So I'm trying to do a lot more writing.
Yeah.
And I could go out there and read, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, and all these various books, and how to write a book or how to write a blog, or there's tons of things out there on writing. And doing a bit of reading actually helps the writing in itself, but just writing, right? Just doing lots more writing and putting some effort and intention into that writing, I think has been great. And you notice improvement, or at least I feel like I've got a little bit more coherence in things that I write now.
I'm sure you do.
And so the big one for me out of that was Nassim Taleb, and he's probably had a mention in every single other episode so far, so why not this one?
That's it.
His idea around the target and just shooting towards the target. And actually,
what's that?
Yeah, so it's this idea that shooting towards the target and being slightly off and then shooting again, you're going to gradually find your way, rather than sitting there and trying to aim, get the right trajectory, the right pullback on the bow, say, for example, while we're using the targeted analogy, the right height, what's the wind doing, what's the air coefficient,
get your feedback loop going, yeah.
And all that stuff. Just start doing. And he's actually proved this, I believe, mathematically in complex systems, which is far beyond my understanding of anything. So, and then obviously we look at Mr. Chouinard from Let My People Go Surfing, and his idea of, he just wanted to make some rock climbing gear, and as part of doing that, he was just doing it for himself, and he started doing it.
Little paraphernalia on right now.
I'm actually representing him right now. There you go.
I think I'm going to the shop tomorrow to get some gear for my upcoming trip. So
I like it, mate.
It's good.
Supporting the earth.
Supporting Shanard.
And then we did have a brief interruption just before, but there was a little bit brought from that. And there's a book that I'm going to read and that we'll definitely do on an upcoming episode, which is Can't Hurt Me by Dave Goggins. And so this is a guy that's basically, he just goes into something and sees what happens. And he's, fallen over time and time and time and time again. And he gets up, goes again, gets up, goes again, gets up, goes again. For those of you who follow his Instagram account, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Pretty motivational guy. But that's how he got to, some of the positions that he's been able to achieve, and now the fame, I guess, that he's attracted to himself.
How much of that do you want?
Improvement, or
he's so extreme.
He's intense. I think he sets a. I wouldn't say it's a benchmark. I think he sets a ceiling. But he's also inspiration as to how far you can go. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I guess it comes back to taking what you want, how much you want out of those things, right?
Well, you can take it down the other end of the scale too, right? So let's go all the way to the other end where you have people philosophizing and theorizing about the best way to climb let's say a management structure within the Defence Force, which is what he, I guess, did. And I'm sure that exists. Mm. Who's going to get further? Who's going to come closer to the truth?
Definitely. But is he living a happy life? I'm not so sure. So
he seems pretty happy though. He seems like a content kind of guy.
He doesn't seem very content to me.
Damn, okay.
He seems...
Do you think he seems too...
There's some sort of... Oh, definitely. There's some sort of like...
Always unsatisfied.
Yeah, impatience or some sort of need to punish yourself. That I feel like he's not... I wouldn't categorise him as from a distance as someone who's super happy. I wouldn't have thought, but that may not be what he wants.
Yeah, and maybe.
But there's certainly something to learn from his extreme achievements. But
do you think he's kind of like flying over all this underlying stuff that might be going on, and so he's just pushing through it instead, and that's where you see him as maybe not being happy? But then again, it's also what is his interpretation of happiness?
Yeah, like probably work. It's just not for me. That level of, extreme personality, I suppose.
We should have a good time reading that book then, mate.
That'll be a good episode to do. I'm interested because I've listened to a few of his interviews and I read a book about him where he moved in with a guy called Jesse Itzner, I think it's called, Living with a Seal. I think that launched his fame. Mm. And he was just, he'd seen David Goggins like run, 100K round a circuit and till his feet were bleeding or something. He's like, who the hell is this guy? And he had a team of 5 people that were doing that and they'd all take breaks. And it was like a relay, and David did it himself, I think. And so,
who won? Being
this guy that's super extreme himself, he lives this out there life. He said, "Come move in with me." He's got his wife is the creator of Spanx, Sarah Blakely, and anyway, old David moved in for I think 6 weeks or 6 months, I can't remember, and he it's like a diary about what they did together, and he got him super fit.
I'm friends with a few guys in a similar space, in the elite defense force spaces, if you want to call it that.
Uh-huh.
And they do have there is a similar mindset. I see what you're saying about I wouldn't say it's a punishing, but there's almost like you're getting into a space of maybe like what's called the hurt locker, right? And they seem to love being in that hurt locker. But I think at least the guys that I know, they're quite happy. They seem quite happy.
But are they running 300k marathons till they have to get taken to hospital? Like,
well, then they're not running that on a regular basis, but they're running maybe 100 kilometres on it, a couple of times a year, or those type of feats. And so it's
pretty cool.
And that's pretty intense. Like 100 Ks is a pretty intense race, or they might try and.
But I see that as a bit of a distinction between what Goggins is like.
I think they enjoy just being in the same space. And I feel like you kind of jump into this zone, the hurt locker zone, when you're really pushing yourself physically. You notice it doing you're coming towards a last rep, say at the gym, let's say for the gym goers, the weightlifters out there, and you're coming to that last rep, and in your head there's this, I can't do this, that kind of just glistens over, right? I think they love being right at that edge and then kind of just sitting in that zone and just beating against that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm more commenting on the level that he takes it to on a super regular basis. Seems quite extreme to me. Like in that book, he's up every day running ridiculous, Ks and pushing himself till his body breaks down, like every day, that's his life. That seems quite over the top. But
that's intense, yeah.
Yeah. Which book would you pick out of the first 10 episodes as having the most influence on you?
I read this, when I originally read this, was quite a long time ago, which was Principles, Ray Dalio. I bought it when it first came out in 2017, tail end of 2017. I think that's when it was. And I pretty much picked it up straight away and read it straight away. Mind you, it took me quite a while to get through it. I would just say, first of all, the benchmark that he has set, and maybe again, he might also be a ceiling, similar to what we were talking about with Goggins, in terms of his hurt locker zone, let's call it that. In terms of Dalio's principles zone, I think he maybe has set a ceiling in terms of how far you can take this. But there's a lot of good that can come from it. And so I think just looking at things in a bit more of a systematic, structured way, and I do get told time to time that I'm quite systematic and structured as it is.
Well, it probably appeals to us because we're engineers anyway.
It's a very engineering way of thinking.
Yeah.
This first and then this and then this.
Yeah. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Finally, a formula for life.
I've worked out the answer.
Yeah.
And so that for me has been great. And then, not just the act of principles, but there's some great principles themselves within that book.
And the bit on his biography is cool too in that book. Yeah,
it's a great little, rags to riches story almost.
Yeah.
You?
For me, it's the Black Swan. And not just that, but I've now through 2 of his other books in the Incerto series, and I've got 2 to go. But the whole thing just totally changed my perspective on the world and let me understand the world better. And the themes that run through those books weave their way through everything else, I reckon. You can find them in all 10 books. The complex, how to act in a complex situation and non-complex, things that happen out of the blue, and just how to deal with the different types of scenarios you meet in the world. I think it weaves through everything. I don't find him that necessarily, his writing is a bit hard to stomach sometimes. But he's just like, his ideas are so good that it doesn't matter.
So I love the way he writes. I don't like the way he gives a speech. I think
he's belligerent.
I think it comes off in the way there's the real combative piece that sometimes pulls you back. But I love he pulls in like these random stories or random people or personas, or and quite often there's a real translation to them.
I love that Nero and Fat Tony and everything. And talking about weaving through the episodes, I think that Principles and the Black Swan, they all weave through most of the other stuff we've talked about, like the Naval episode, Let My People Go Surfing, particularly Range and Giro kind of work through the complex and the non-complex and kind of how to deal with those two type of situations.
Yeah, well, you're looking at like Range is down one end of the scale and Giro's at the other end of the scale in terms of this mastery space.
Yeah.
Right? But they've kind of come to the same place because the Range, when you're operating across all these, you've built up to this many different domains of thinking and looking at the world, you realise how complex it is. And then you go into Giro's space, and because he's gotten to such fine detail and nuance around how he does things, he's in a complex world himself, right? They're different environments.
Yeah.
They're different ecosystems. Don't get me wrong. One's what you could probably call a harsh operating environment, and one's kind of a safer operating environment, much closer to playing a game. There's more, there's
like
less
more,
variables.
Maybe closed or open.
Yeah.
Making sushi every day is more closed, more like playing chess, more repeatable. The Range is the random environment.
Yes. And I think pulling those two together, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, and regardless, iterative learning is important, but how much weight you put on different things in different environments is important. So the iterative learning in Giro, you're going to be able to repeat that over and over and over again for the skills that he's learning and hone in further. For Range, it's more about you need to be iterative but ready, more open for things to change rapidly, or to find secrets in other areas that might become relevant to you in the current area you're working in without you really realizing. The more general you are, the more ready you'll be to solve new problems, I think.
And at the end of the day, they've both realised the world is fucking complex.
So,
and just to emphasise an earlier point, every single one of these authors was biased towards action.
Got out there and started doing stuff. So my experience with action bias is a bit interesting.
You're quite an action bias guy.
I am, but only in particular areas. So in sharing my thoughts and my philosophies and that sort of thing, that's something I've had to push really hard to get through a barrier to be able to start doing, like this podcast and my writing and putting stuff out. That's taken me a long time to get over the hurdle of not wanting to be judged on what I think.
So I don't think that's action bias or not.
No?
I think that's a different thing. I think you are action biased by the fact that you're actually doing it, right?
But maybe I've wanted to for a while and not.
Yeah, but it's not the action that's holding you back. You're not over planning or trying to get it perfect. You're just holding back because you're not doing it because you're holding back for another reason, which is, what's this going to look like out in the world or something of that nature. Yeah. I don't consider that a fall down of your action bias.
That's interesting. So I've had interesting experience with action bias where I think I am generally someone who'll just do something, but I find myself reflecting on some things I've had action bias towards. say I've built an app, and I learnt so much doing that, but it's taken 2 years to do it and to learn all the mistakes. And to me, hopefully it'll still work out all right and come to something, but I wonder if I could have done a bit more planning that might have stopped some of the mistakes I've made. So sometimes maybe I'm too action biased, and
maybe we could take a leaf out of each other's books.
Yeah, I think maybe we should
trade a couple of notes.
Maybe I should back off 10% and you take 10% and I'll swap you. Because sometimes I'll just do stuff and now I'm looking back and going, man, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not saying that necessarily for that. I'm not too down on this software. It's more just generally, but maybe that's just the part of, doesn't Alain Baton saying if you don't look back at yourself 12 months ago and think how stupid you were, you haven't learnt enough in the past year. So I feel like that about some of the stuff I've done. And you feel a little bit, God, why did I do that? But maybe that's just part of learning.
Well, mate, Pareto principle says that you give me 20% of your stuff and that'll give me 80% of the results. So that's what I'm banking.
Is that how that works?
That's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So we've both been writing. What are you writing about?
So my most recent thing is I'm going to get back to this engineering space again, but it's about the way I track knowledge, particularly for the likes of this podcast and just for general learning. And it's basically basically stolen Robert Greene and Ryan Holiday's note-taking system and put it in a digital way. So I'm using Evernote to do that. And so I was basically writing about how I go about achieving that.
You need to share the link for that because it's pretty awesome, your note-taking system, I reckon. I'm looking forward to incorporating it into my work.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it practical. And so I definitely am on board with the idea that you get more from writing things down by hand. But I don't always have a notebook with me. I don't always want to have a notebook with me that I'm going to capture a random quote and then remember to come back to or have some way of coming back to. So for me, it's easier just to pull out the phone, which is already with us, and write that thing down or write that idea down, or you hear this thing on the radio and you put it on. So
what else are you kind of focusing on? Are you trying to document some of your thoughts, or because that's quite a practical article, which is fantastic for everyone. Is that part of a broader theme in your writing?
So the Evernote captures the knowledge from all the books and different things we take on, particularly for this podcast. But as I mentioned, I'm also just doing some general writing and trying to write most days if I can, just to improve and continue to put out, maybe a blog post per month is where we're looking at the moment.
That's awesome.
And something that's got a little bit of meat in it.
So something you've refined.
Yeah, just an idea, something, and then this is where the knowledge base itself comes in, because having that knowledge base sitting there means you're easily able to draw on things that you've read 3 years ago, 4 years ago. You look up you're writing about a particular topic, bias. Look up a tag bias, pull up all the stuff you have on biases. I imagine there's going to be a lot of Daniel Kahneman in there, but there'll be lots of other things in there too.
It just gets so much more powerful as time goes on. Imagine that in 10 years. I've got to start doing that. For me, I've been writing too. This is a thing. Self-expression's the new thing for me. So I've been writing my principles.
I like this. Now, what are these your life principles, Lockie, or are these your work principles? Or what
I'm calling it how to get what you want from your work. But it's got to do with you need to think about, the way I approach my work is to think about what I want for my life and then how my work can empower that. And it's hard, like it's not something that's necessarily easy or I've mastered, far from it, but I think about that in a more intentional way than most people. And so I don't feel like I'm in any place to offer life advice, but I have thought and read a lot about work and how to get better at stuff. So I'm offering my thoughts on that for people to kind of take or leave if they want to.
Give us something. Give us a bite-sized piece of it, mate. Give us something that comes to mind.
Okay, so, well, I guess it's split up into 4 sections. So I've kind of, it is very the great artist steal or whatever. So it's weaved through all the things I've learnt from reading, and heavily influenced by, Ray Dalio and all that. And so the 4 principles though, or the 4 sections I've come up with are essentially the idea is that you want to get up a hill. And so you want to aim. You've got to have the velocity to get moving. You've got to have fuel and
to get fuel in the fire.
Yeah, and then acceleration. So they're the 4 sections.
Because you don't want to spend all your time, taking your whole time just to get there.
No, so the aim is like, which hill am I going up? What do I want? The velocity is how to get moving. What are the core basic principles that I think you need that make you lucky and skillful? And it's about understanding luck and skill and how those 2 things combine. The 3rd, fuel, is how to feed the fire that keep you moving. So how do you learn things? And a lot of that inspirations come from some of the stuff we've talked about on this podcast. And the 4th is acceleration. So these are kind of the more higher level concepts that will get you there faster, whatever you are aiming for. And the idea of them are that they're to be read at first, one after the other, but then they're to be used as a network together. And you need to be doing all of them at once, and they all interconnect and affect one another. Because you'll want different things throughout your life, And that was something after my dad read it, he sort of said, well, this is written by someone in their early 30s trying to conquer their career, but your priorities change over time. And so I think I've incorporated a bit more of that in it, that, the idea is you can use this idea to get what you want, whatever that may be. And so make sure you're tweaking what you're doing so that if you want to stay home more to look after your new family, or you want to be Richard Branson, or you want to travel the world, or not, or sit in your basement, that's fine. But these are the things I think you can use to get there. So
I'm excited to read more.
Yeah, well, I'm working on it. So
it's a manifesto in development.
Yeah, and it kind of came together because I was talking to people in, say, professional development situations, or someone had asked me for my thoughts on something, and I'd babble through some half-assed explanation where I had 3 of the pieces together of, say, something that I'd learnt from the Black Swan, or something that Ray had said, or something from my own experience, and it would just end up being quite confusing.
And probably confusing to you by the end.
Yeah,
I do that.
And I'd come away from it going, that didn't help. And so this is my attempt to bring all those things together. And something interesting I found while doing it is that some parts of it I'm not doing myself. Even though I think that this is the right way to do it, I'm not doing it enough. So that's been really helpful for my own reflection to go, hey, if I actually think this, I need to do it too. So
you got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So that's part of our monthly check-ins that we're doing. Keep each other accountable. We've actually picked up something new that's very common this year. Something we're both going to do. Not lying. This has been tough.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't feel like I'm a dishonest person. But
Does anyone?
I don't. Well, I think some people are intentionally dishonest because it's a way to sometimes get what you want.
I think everyone's
to steal your turn.
intentionally dishonest.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, yep.
To certain degrees. There's malicious.
That's what I was talking about. So there's certainly people that set out to just, how can we get this the shortest, quickest way and burn the most things in our path?
Yeah. It seems that you can find a way to justify most things, though.
That's true. So, but telling someone that, yes, you will, receive the money tomorrow.
You're lying then, don't you?
Yeah. Let's be realistic here.
But there's the lying you're doing that you don't realize.
Yeah. And so that's been the challenge, is the lying that's done from to protect yourself or an avoidance mechanism.
Yeah.
There's also the lying of, intentionally leaving out details to cover up things or to not let them out. And it's not to say that we're going out of our way to, just be totally transparent and be blunt and tell everyone how things are.
You need a filter.
Yeah. There's still a filter applied, but it's trying to make an intention to be more honest and catching yourself. And I've caught myself quite a few times going to tell a bit of a furdy.
What? A furphy?
Furdy, not a beer.
No, isn't it a furphy?
No, that's a beer.
No.
Mate.
No, we're checking that afterwards because it's
Fact
definitely
check.
a furphy.
I might have been lied to my whole
So there's some honesty.
my whole childhood.
Yeah, it is tough though. It's something that's in 12 Rules for Life. This is one of his things.
Haven't read it.
Don't lie.
Don't lie.
Yeah.
Well, but the third, there's like another layer of not just other people, but it's lying to yourself.
That's hard. That's where we're getting into psychology.
Where you over rationalize a situation or something. You can rationalize anything. Which I think you were saying before. But what's the reality? And kind of leaning into that and facing into that. Have I genuinely stuffed up here?
Yeah, it's helped my self-esteem actually, not lying. I think, but I still catch myself lying.
Have you had some tough encounters in a situation where you'd normally not lie? Or sorry, where you'd normally lie?
I've made it harder for myself in situations by telling the truth this year, but I wouldn't say I've yet got to the point where I'm confronting everything I should. So working on it.
But
it's
mate.
more that avoidance thing, I think. So, yeah.
That's been a good little check-in. Thanks,
See you next time.
Bye.